Aeneas travels to a shrine south of Naples, Cumae, where there is a famous portal to the underworld, one of several in the ancient world. He is asked to wait at the doors, which are covered with bronze castings made by Daedalus, a previous visitor. Here is a condition where signs, which Freud indicates most often take the form of pictorial substitutes, give us a way of situating the condition of Vorstellungs-Repräsentanz in terms of metaphor. I'm aiming to relate the or metaphor of Lacan's matheme for the metaphor to the X, that unknown, that causes the signifying chain to circle around on itself, forming a surface that is a version of the surface of pain that Lacan describes in Seminar 7. This is the surface from which there is no escape, in effect the projective surface that is self-intersecting and non-orientable. Hades meets the specifications for the projective surface, and the labyrinth identified with Daedalus gives hints as to why this is true. Furthermore, the idea of Hades has two important aspects in relation to projectivity. First, the word Hades in Greek means the invisible, and so Hades constitutes a kind of virtuality forbidden to Euclidean representation. It is effective by the very fact that it is denied entry. Second, the Thesean labyrinth, that is the most common formulation of Hades' plan, is a purification of the relation of the architectural plan to the pacing of a track or trace. The labyrinth is a walk-through version of hell, thanks to its fractal design that repeats the pattern of ABA 3 times, forward, backward, forward, so to speak. Make no bones about it, this looks like and is a kind of origami. Mathematically, we know that although the Delian paradox, the doubling size of the altar at Delos as a condition of vanquishing the plague from Athens, cannot be accomplished by Euclidean procedures, but it can, like the trisection of an angle, be solved by folding. They knew that everything uncanny, which covers what we might think of as the treasury of Hades, is a matter of folding. Although Pappus of Alexandria, working around 300 AD, clearly comes out of a world conditioned by Euclid's 6 books of geometry, he discovers a geometry that is logically prior to Euclid. You could derive Euclid from projective geometry, but not the other way around. The question then, is there something that came before Euclid, something that was historically prior, that provoked Euclid to create geometry as a kind of defense and protection, something that sealed off our ideas of pictorial reality from a primitive ancestor, feared and despised? It's as if projective geometry was the Apollo and Euclid the Daphne. In fact, scholars have pointed out that Euclid could be said to be a response to the Greek fear of infinity. Pictorial construction rules out infinity by domesticating it, although this attempt had a weak spot, the famous doubtful 5th postulate about parallel lines. After Pappus, Girard Desargues and the young genius Blaise Pascal mounted a direct attack on this fear of infinity, asserting that certain procedures could make the vanishing point lying on the infinitely distant horizon into a tangible function. Without the need for measurement, Desargues and Pascal showed how projective lines and planes were able to include the observer and the observed, the representation and the represented. Their groundbreaking demonstrations, however, were misunderstood in their own time. But in the 19th century, their work was restored and extended. For 100 years, geometry meant projective geometry. It is misleading to say that projective geometry is non-Euclidean, as if projective geometry was just a matter of taking Euclid and adding a 4th dimension, and then associating this 4th dimension with a spooky supplement akin to the ability to travel through time or bend space. In fact, projective geometry was foundational, but the question of what came historically before Euclid to match this logical priority was left unanswered. Unanswered until Freud, that is, who in his discovery of the unconscious as a kind of signifierness without an object correlated to a sign for the object, gave rise to a specifically human thinking. Projective geometry begins with a theorem discovered by Pappus of Alexandria around 300 AD. Not even those who cover the influence of projective geometry in Lacan's thinking talk about Pappus, but his theorem is simple and compelling. It shows how locality inherently generates a kind of quantum that he first articulated as a vector constructed by connecting sets of points on two lines. The revolution here was that Pappus broke with Euclid. His theorem can be constructed with just a straight edge, no compass needed to determine distance or angles. The points can be at any distance from each other, and the lines can be in any position. The anywhere of the points and lines construct an elsewhere that reveals the secret of combinatorial logic. The key, which no one ever mentions, is the way the construction lines have to connect the points in a zigzag order. This zigzag is really about how projective space can be both inside and outside the picture. The zigzag or crisscross is always overlooked. Even mathematicians who cite Pappus's theorem as the foundational idea of projective geometry do not say anything about this crisscross methodology. But it is this very crisscross that is the ecstasy between the hand and the glove that Lacan cites. Between perception and consciousness there is a border crossing, with an interrogation, an inspection. The guards will ask you to present your documents and open your trunk. The trick of getting across is to get each of the two guards to think that the other has completed the search. The closed condition is where each guard requires the other guard to do his duty. The open condition, the X, is where the traveler realizes that the two guards can be made to cancel each other out, to, in effect, become one guard who, smiling, waves us on. The two guards in my example are, of course, the signifying chains, one in the hand position, the other in the glove position. Pappus, the father of projective geometry, shows how passage is like the eigenvector, whose precision and determinacy, whose rectitude, to put it in terms that coincide with Lacan's thesis that signifierness is related to ethics, is the direct result of the vicissitudes, the random encounters, the touquet, so to speak, of the other randomly placed lines and their randomly assigned points.